Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is Felicia, and today I want to do a little bit of a story time. Tell me if you enjoy it. Lately, I'm not a big conspiracy person, but I like to watch videos about conspiracy, true crime. Not that I enjoy it happening, but it just intrigues me, and it's something that strikes my interest. Really enjoy finding out about new cases. Not that I'm happy that they're happening, but in the end, some of them are mysterious, some of them are just deaths, and we all die in the end, and death is a part of life. Unfortunately, some deaths are worse than others. So as I'm interested in this topic, I thought that I would try to do it myself. And to be honest, I don't really need to look up a lot of them, because since I was a kid I was kind of surrounded by death. I lived in an old house and I had a lot of old people living at my block. Old people die in the end, unfortunately, and every couple of months I would see a coffin outside the window and one of my neighbors in it, and that was just something normal. That was just a part of life. If anyone have seen some of my older videos, I'll just remind you, I am from Chisinau, and the story that I'm about to tell you, it's from the neighborhood that I grew up in. So just a little bit of background. When I was 4, my parents moved in to this house, to this neighborhood. It was a really old neighborhood near the town center, or downtown, or call it whatever you want, in Chisinau. If you want, I'll insert a picture from the satellite, from Google Maps, on how the street kind of looks like. There was an Armenian church, as you can see, right next to it, and it was a main street, so it was a double-sided street. The street that I lived in, today it's called Eyebrow, because it's in the name of one of our greatest poets. And the house that I grew up in was actually had a marble plate on it, because another famous poet lived there. His name was Delano. So there was a marble plate on it saying this is the house that Delano lived in. He was another Malayan Romanian poet. From what I remember, when I moved in, when we moved in when I was about 4, there weren't any buildings. From what I can presume, I would say there weren't any buildings built after the 1960s, because our building was quite old. There were buildings across the street which were even older. I don't know if you can see in a photo, there was a maternity hospital right next to my house, where actually my mom was born. While I'm talking, I'm just gonna start applying my makeup. The building itself was quite old. I think it was even old if my mom was born there, and my mom is from 58. I'll just put on the screen the photo of the maternity and the year that it was founded in, but it's quite old from what I know. I don't know if it's more than 100 years old, but it was quite old. We moved in kind of during the 90s. I was 4 years old, so I think that must have been 97. From one side, you could say it was a quiet and peaceful neighborhood. From the other side, there was a lot of stuff going around. Considering that, beginning with the 90s, there was the collapse of the Soviet Union, Law gainers had her independence, there was a lot of shit going around. There was the crisis. Everything was supposed to change. Some people lose, some people win. I don't know how it was in the other places of the world, but in the 90s, at least where I grew up, it was kind of a mess. And I bet it was the same kind of in the other post-Soviet countries. There's a lot of criminal things going on, shootings, drugs, and everything. Considering that I was living not far from town, the house that I lived in was okay, but from what I know, in the lower parts of the neighborhood, like 3 blocks down the street, there were some dodgy things going on. I heard there were shootings, heroin addicts, everything you want. Even it would expand up to our little block. This is my block, and the red marker is where my staircase entrance was of the block. I lived on the 5th floor. Most of my neighbors were old people and young families with kids. So there were a lot of kids and old people. In our house, it was kind of quiet. There weren't problematic people or anything like that. I mean, there were a couple of alcoholics. There was nothing more threatening than that. Though, to be honest, I remember one of my neighbors, she got kicked out, and I'm not sure if it was her family or the people that rented her out. Or whatever the case was, because I wasn't really interested into it, but I know that she was kind of a drunk. She got really, really drunk, and she got all her stuff on our staircase, on our floor, and she was sleeping there with her stuff, and she was passed out drunk, and I don't know why, but I was fucking terrified, and I was terrified to walk past her. I don't know why. I like treated extremely drunk people like zombies. So actually drunk people do act like zombies, because there's no more human consciousness in that piece of flesh. Because I've seen people that drank until the level that they couldn't speak. So unfortunately, that is a truth of life. Apart from that, even on my staircase, because the building was old, our entrances weren't locked, so anyone could get in. There was a lot of people that had break-ins in our neighborhood. I never knew anyone specific, but my mom was always telling me, and I always heard about cases and over the news, and there was some fucked up shit going around in the neighborhood, in the country. So because anyone could get into our block, there weren't only neighbors that would pass out drunk on our staircases would sleep. You would sometimes find just random homeless people sleeping there, or someone would come in and take a piss and it would smell like urine, or would even take a shit and wipe their asses with someone's mail if you wouldn't have a mailbox that had a fucking key. And unfortunately, that was the reality. And even more, I can tell you that in the block, there weren't only drunks, and there weren't only people that needed to go to the toilet. I could often see syringes, and I knew I was I was told what was a heroin addict when I was about 4 or 5, since I moved in to that block, because I've been seeing those every single time I was going out. And my mom told me not to touch them because I'm gonna get AIDS, I'm gonna get sick, I'm gonna get hepatitis. Nice. And apart from that, if I was walking around the block sometimes there was a funny story that I found a condom and I didn't know what it was, and I was about 5 as well. You know, our blocks weren't separated by fences or anything, they were just blocks, and the rest of it was public property. There was playgrounds in between houses usually, and there was a parking spot. I'll put the photo again, and if you see, there's a new build there right next to the church. But before that, there was a big parking lot, and only the new builds have fences and their own playgrounds and everything. But before, it was all communism, shit like that. So that's what it was, and that's how it was. You could walk around under someone's block just like that, you know. You can do it even until now. There is shitloads of those kind of houses still like that, with no fences, no nothing around them. But most of the people now kind of locked out their doors. They have like the home phone, and apart from the home phone, they have locks and keys and stuff like that. So technical progress spoke for itself, kind of. And the cleaners we kind of paid to the council for, or to the, I'm not sure if it was like local council or shit like that, that was made out of people that lived in the neighborhood. The cleaner wasn't paid enough that we were paying for, and that's why no one gave a shit about if it was smelling like piss, if there was shit around, there was homeless people sleeping, or heroin syringes. But the funny thing that I wanted to tell you was that if you could walk around under people's windows, you could find trying different kind of stuff. I remember when I was 5, I found a condom and I didn't know it was a condom. And I thought it was a balloon. And it was a used one and it had liquid in it. Now that I'm thinking about it, it sounds disgusting, but what can you tell a kid that doesn't know anything about it? So my mom saw me with it and she told me don't touch it, don't ever touch it. And she explained to me what a condom was, so I wouldn't want to actually touch it. And she said that I can get sick from it as well if I touch it and I play with it. Great. Life was like that. But apart from all that atmosphere, I had quite a decent childhood, to be fair. And I had friends, I had toys, I went to school, I had my family, I had clean clothes, I had pocket money, which not every kid in my neighborhood or outside my neighborhood usually had. I wasn't really bougie, but I wasn't poor either, so I'm kind of thankful. And I don't think it was because of the neighborhood. Mostly it was just because those were those kind of times. It was the dark ages. It was just the times that were like that. Because to be fair, it changed after a couple of years, and the atmosphere in the neighborhood changed. Though I still knew people, and I even met a couple of people that I was told that they were heroin addicts. But, you know, I mean, I never took it. I'm never gonna take it. I know that I'm staying away from those nasty substances, and I think you need to be very fucking desperate to inject yourself with something to feel something. But hey, if you're going through some shit in life, you'll have all my support to not do it. Just explaining you all the atmosphere, what kind of a neighborhood was it. So it was like somewhere in the middle. The ghetto was a couple of blocks away, because there's where the shit mostly was going on and was happening. Because after our street ended, there was the little river, and there was a street right on the river where you could pick up prostitutes, and that's still till this day the place where you pick up prostitutes. And to be honest, or sex workers, apologies, but that's how my mom used to call them. But that is true. You could get sex workers right at the end of the street, and those were different times, I would say, especially in the place that I grew up. I'm not saying that you need to pity me or anything like that, because this is just what happened. Nothing can be changed. Was I traumatized by that? Not really. But maybe it gave me an early understanding in life of what shit happens, and about drugs, contraceptives, criminal world, old people dying, and all that jazz. So, sorry for the long introduction, but I think I needed to explain what kind of a dodgy place I grew up in. I'll re-include the photo where my staircase entrance was. I lived on the 5th floor, and by the title of the video you will find out about what happened to 3 people on the 2nd floor. There isn't a lot of mystery. There might be a lot of mystery to it. In the end, everyone lives their life the way they want to, and everyone is entitled to what they want, to what they do. And karma will get you in the end. It's just hard to start the story, and I'm not quite sure from which one to start, because it's about my 3 neighbors from the 2nd floor. Okay, I'll start with a neighbor that lived in the 42nd apartment. I lived in the 56th. He lived in the 42nd apartment, and he had a family. He had a wife, he had children. He was kind of in his mid-30s, a healthy man, had a dog and everything. I hated that dog because I'm terrified of dogs. Sorry for all the dog lovers, but this is just trauma from my childhood, because we have a lot of ownerless dogs walking around our towns. I mean, if you want to Google about loose dogs and shit like that in Ukraine, Eastern Europe, Russia, Moldova, there's been a lot of cases when people were attacked. Thanks God I never got actually bitten by a dog or anything like that. If I hear a dog barking and completely shit my pants, or if I see a dog without a leash, I'm not gonna go on that street. Doesn't matter if it's a Chihuahua or if it's a fucking Labrador, but if it doesn't have a leash and if it doesn't have any control upon it, I'm not gonna trust that animal. It's just my instincts, and I don't know, I can't really control them. Thanks God, where I live, people look after their dogs. They're well trained, they're well behaved, and they don't live somewhere outside in an alley in packs. I know how they live in Moldova, in my hometown. Well, I think they tried to kind of solve that problem a little bit. Like, they would catch them and they would number them and they would sterilize them so there would be less populations of dogs. Maybe sometimes they would let them go. But I'm not big in what happens with the animals there. I like animals, but just, I don't know, it's just because of what happened to me. I'm not really getting involved with a lot of it, especially what happens to dogs. I know not all of them are aggressive or misbehaved, and especially here, but back there in the country that I grew up in, it's a mess. It's a mess not only in what happens to animals and animal care and everything, it's a mess what happens to the politics, the economics and everything else. So it's a non-European country in the middle Europe. It's between Romania and Ukraine, I'll say it again. And that was too long of an insert, but I just explained to you my phobia, why I don't really like dogs. Not because I have some unexplainably hatred towards them. It's just something that happened to me and that scared me. But if your dog is well behaved and on a leash, I will never say anything bad to you. And throughout my lifetime, I even managed to actually make some dog friends. So I mean, I'm okay if I know the owner, because I can even like play with it and everything, and I'm not afraid of puppies. It's just barking, loud barking dogs with no leashes. That's what terrifies me. I was mostly not afraid of people, but of dogs. When I was walking down the street at night back in Chisinau, that was my biggest fear. It was dogs, not people. Considering all of that, they had a dog, they were living it outside. Sometimes I was terrified to go past the second floor just because they were leaving their dog on the staircase. And why the fuck do you get a dog if you don't keep it inside? I mean, it was barking at everyone, it was making noise and everything, but that's not a point. He was a nice guy. Apart from leaving his dog outside his house, he was a nice guy. He had a family, he was in his mid-30s, and he liked to usually go for a swim. So the guy from the 42nd apartment one day went for a swim, and usually where you can go for a swim in our places, if it's not a public pool, you could go and have a bit of a steam room there, like not really a spa, but you can steam yourself. So it was kind of a sauna and swimming pool, something like that. He went to one of those places, and he was swimming, then he went into the steam room. And what we usually do after we go into the steam room, we straightforward go into the cold pool. That's what we usually do. It's considered to be good for your immune system, that it kind of makes you not feel the cold. You actually don't feel, you feel the cold less after you've done it 2 or 3 times, even that same day, because even the second time you get steamed and you jump into the pool, you don't get cold. I mean, you don't really feel the cold. The thing is that it might be problematic for people that have problems with their blood pressure. So he went into the pool, then he went for a steam, and then he jumped into the pool and he had a heart attack. And that's what happened, and that's how he died. And the second day we found out that my neighbor from the 42nd apartment on the second floor died. He had a daughter. She was a couple of years younger than me, from what I remember. And I found out recently that that was her dad, because I was kind of too little to understand whose parent was, because there were a lot of kids in the neighborhood. And that was quite shocking. That was a shock for everyone, kind of, because he was like 30, in his mid-30s. He was like 35, 34. That's very young to actually die of a heart attack, but you know, you can never know when life will end. And that's what happened to one of my neighbors. After that, there was some drama going on the first floor. The first floor, there was a couple of old people. They were like, I'm not sure if they're like they were from Ukraine or they had roots from Ukraine. But they were like Russian speakers, and he called himself that he was Ukrainian. And I know that he had a wife. She was beautiful. She was in her 60s. She died very young, because she died only a couple of years after we moved in, from what I know. And then his daughter moved in with them. Or was she living there already? I don't remember, to be fair. She was pregnant, but she wasn't married. But I know that the father of her child was an Armenian guy. And remember when I told you there was an Armenian church right next to us? So apparently he was somewhere related to that. Because to be fair, that Armenian church was like the center of Armenian culture, kind of. I'm not quite sure, a culture in my town. So every single Armenian knew about the church, or was somehow related to that church. Because there was like the Sunday school where kids could go and learn the language. I would hear a lot of people speaking in Armenian, and then most of them, with the rest of the people, they would speak Russian, from what I know. But that was reminiscence from the Soviet Union, and that is what it was. It's a very beautiful church. I have some pictures of that church here and there with me on being a little goth kid, but it's a really pretty place, and I always liked to walk around next to it because it reminded me of castles and medieval castles and everything. So that was somewhat an architectural monument next to my house. I mean, I'm not quite sure about the provenance of it, what it was, but it's a really beautiful church. The insert about the church is clear. So the guy that was related to that church was Armenian. He got the old guy's daughter pregnant, but from what I knew, they weren't getting along, like, at all. I don't know what the hell was going on, or what was the drama in there. I know that that's kind of when my childhood friend Larissa was born. She was his daughter, and she really had those Armenian features on her face. You could tell straight away. She was tan. She would have black hair, like actual very dark brown natural hair color, and she had really nice bushy brows that you can transform them into whatever the fuck you want. And of course a little bit of the typical, you know, elongated nose, but she was pretty. She is pretty. She grew up in a really pretty lady. Unfortunately, I don't have any photos of her. But I'm telling you about the neighbors from the second floor. As I was telling you, her dad, she was already born. So she was a baby. She was, I don't know if she was a year old. She was a couple of months old. I was a kid myself. I don't know if I was going to school yet or not. I think I was like 6 or something. Her dad and her grandpa, so she lived with her grandpa. Her dad and her grandpa got into a really bad fight. They were arguing, they were talking shit. I think they were even punched each other a couple of times. Then, I think he kicked him out of the house. They were still yelling at each other. Her dad pulled out a gun and shot towards her grandpa. But unfortunately, I don't know what happened there because I wasn't the witness of it. Thanks God. My neighbor from the 44th apartment on the second floor was coming downstairs and he got shot instead. And he was shot dead on the floor. And no one even touched him. I don't know if someone called the police or not. I know that my friend's dad left the country straight away and no one has ever seen him after. I'm not sure if her grandpa called the police, what happened. He had a really hard life afterwards, but you know, shit happens and there's a lot of shit going around. So that's what happened to my neighbor from the second floor of the 44th apartment. He got shot dead. I'm still in the end not sure who called the police because that thing happened in the morning, somewhere after 9 o'clock, because from what I know, my brother was at school already. And when he was coming back from school, which was around 1 or 2 o'clock, there was still the dead body on the staircase and my brother saw it. He was like 4 years older than me, so he wasn't like a lot bigger or older. He was 10 years maybe at that time, and believe me, even for a 10-year-old, I think seeing a shot dead body on your staircase is kind of somewhat fucked up, don't you think? Eventually they found out what happened. They interrogated my friend's grandpa. He straight away said that who it was, but unfortunately there was nothing that could have been done because the guy left the country. He fled straight away. And fucking 4 hours for someone to get to see a body, that's kind of messed up, but hey. I think that was the year 1999. Or 98, 1999, so I don't know what the hell was happening in there. It was still the 90s, so I don't know if someone told the policeman to come late, or fuck knows what happened there actually, because why did they take the body so late? Then after the guy died, he was young himself. I mean, he was in his 30s, late 30s maybe, from what I know. I'm not sure if his brother was living with him already, but I know that his brother started living there. They weren't too many years apart, so he wasn't that old either. But after his brother's death, he started drinking, and he started drinking a lot. Even like it was 4 years after. We were playing outside the block with a ball and everything, and he would get out on his balcony from the second floor and yell at us to shut up or shit like that. That's why everyone kind of knew that he was a drunk. He was kind of the only more messed up guy, you know, on our block, but everyone kind of knew what happened, so no one was kind of surprised. Though he had good days when we would accidentally get the ball onto his balcony and he would throw it back, so I don't know, I think it depended on his mood. What happened to him, you're asking? Well, he was a drunk, so he used to drink almost every single day. He disappeared for days, no one could reach him, so someone sent a police squad to his apartment. It was, I think, in the depth of July. And to be honest, it gets very fucking hot during July. 30 degrees Celsius. Up to 35, sometimes even more. Depends. After the guy disappeared, they sent a police squad to his house. And they find him face down in the middle of the room on his carpet in the living room, decomposing. Especially considering the heat. He might have been there for a day or two. And no one really knows what he died of. Most of the people assume that it was just something related to his drinking problem, another heart attack, or hell knows what. I remember there was a lot of police that day. It was summer holidays, so there was a lot of kids outside. So they opened windows and the doors of his balcony, and it smelled like a dead body. The whole fucking neighborhood smelled like a dead body, like a dead, decomposing body. And yeah, I know how that smells like. Smells like rotten meat, if you ask me, but yeah, that's the truth. And after they scraped him off the carpet, they threw away the carpet at our trash point. And afterwards, from what I know, after they cleaned up the mess and everything, I think his sister moved in. Fucking hell, honestly. I do not wish anyone to ever witness that kind of shit in their life. I don't think they did a lot of investigation, because like all of the neighbors said that he was a drunk, so no one really cared about him. No one really bothered of giving any interest to it or anything, which was kind of sad. No one has broken into the house. The locks were all intact. They had to break the door and to get inside the house. So I guess they were right about the cause of death. There's nothing suspicious there, but it's still a sad story, you know? The guy started drinking because his brother got murdered, and they never caught the guy because he fled to Armenia, from what I know. Kind of everyone knew, because everyone at the Armenian church, which was right next to the house, knew about it. And from what I know, when my childhood friend, the guy that murdered my neighbor, was growing up, she would usually go to the church and hang out, because everyone knew who she was, whose daughter she was, and most of the guys there knew whose daughter she was, so she was always well invited there. It's kind of weird that I'm realizing now that my childhood friend's parent was a murderer, and that he actually was aiming for her grandfather, which is even more fucked up. Of course, I was a child at that time, so I wasn't really questioning a lot of that stuff. I wasn't questioning that stuff at all. I was told all of that, but for me it was like facts out of the movie. It was never something that I took it really, you know, seriously and everything, because I don't know, that kind of influenced to detach myself from reality or to be attracted to death. Unfortunately, these things happen, and that was just the place that I grew up in. I can't say that it was good, bad, or whatever. There was family drama included. Tell me if you kind of enjoyed this story. I know the introduction is a bit long, and it will be a bitch to edit. I know that for sure. Because I know myself, and when I start kind of rambling, that's when I realize how much I actually hate myself when I start rambling. And that I need to work on my storytelling, to be fair. That place was fucking messed up. Now the street is called Grigore Viero, but the street that I grew up on actually had 3 names throughout my lifetime, or at least that I knew of. So before that it was called Prospect Молодежи, that was the Soviet name, which was like the prospect of youth, but it was a Russian name, so no one really liked it because we're not Russians and our language isn't Russian, so we changed it to the Boulevard of Rebirth. It was called Boulevard de Renaître. If you translate it to French, it would sound like Boulevard de Renaissance 16, like 16 says. After one of our greatest poets has died, the street was named in his name, Boulevard of Grigore Viero. That was the neighborhood that I grew up in. One of my best childhood friends, which I'm still keeping in touch with, she moved in like at least 5 years after I was living in the neighborhood. Her mom still lives where she lived, because she lived on the 3rd floor, right above the family of the guy that died of a heart attack. She didn't witness anything of what happened with the shot neighbor, or I don't know if she knew about the guy that had a heart attack, but I remember we were playing outside one nice hot summer day in July, and we were smelling the odor of a decomposing corpse. I guess that's something you never forget. And don't call me cold-hearted. I said this story so many times that doesn't really upset me at all. This is a story from my childhood that just happened. You know, these kind of things, you don't choose to see them or hear them. They just happen around you and you have no control upon them because you're a kid and you can't do shit about it. Is there something that my parents could have done about it? No, not really. Not sure if there is anything that you could do about it at all, because how could my brother know that there was a corpse on the staircase? I don't think there is an explanation to that for him to avoid it. I want to say that he's really traumatized, but with all due respect, he is an alcoholic. And I don't know if that was one of his childhood traumas or not, because I am not a psychologist or a psychiatrist to analyze that. And from what I was aware, not even my parents knew there was a dead body on a staircase, because A, my dad wasn't home, B, my mom didn't leave the house that day because she was kind of a housewife taking care of me and my brothers. So I didn't grow up in the best neighborhood in the world, but I have shitloads of messed up stories to tell. Myself, I did do some pretty shitty choices in my life, which I'm not proud of. If you're interested in these kind of stories, please comment down below if you want to hear more. But in the end, even though all that shit happened there, it wasn't considered a bad neighborhood because it was next to the town center or to downtown. Call it however the fuck you want. I am gonna put on some lashes and finish this off. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story time. Tell me down below if you're interested in hearing more fucked up stories about my childhood or not. Sorry, I got a bit raspy there. Don't know what's happening. Why am I losing my voice? If you're interested in what products I use, I will list them all down below, except for the lashes. If you want to know what lashes I've used, you'll have to watch my next video, because I have a lash review coming up, which if you're intrigued, you can watch what kind of lashes these are. If you'll give me a chance on storytelling, I promise you I won't disappoint you. It's just, I needed to tell you an introduction about what kind of place I grew up in and a bit more of a background story. So if you do decide to give me a chance, please like, subscribe. Check out my Instagram down below. As I told you, I'll put all the products that I used today down below. Please comment, good or a bad comment. I just need to know, how am I doing? Is it bad? Is it good? I just need some feedback, people. I'm just sitting here in silence. I'll be delighted, as there is always space for improvement and growth. That's what I'm trying out here. I'm trying out myself, trying out my skills. Sorry for the long video. I bet you were bored. If you watched it till the end, please put a poop emoji so I'll know that someone at least watched it till the end and wasn't too bored with my rambling. I hope that you'll come back for more, and I'll try to be better prepared. Thank you very much for watching, and have a nice one. Bye!